Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Historical Humans podcast. We are on episode 14 of our second season, and we decided to talk about something kind of different. I know we like to use that a lot here, but we're going to be diving into Hollywood this time. My name's Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-hosts, Colum Coleman and Aaron Gilpin. And I know you're just
Yo.
chomping at the bit waiting, so we'll let
Today,
Colum go.
today is a very special episode. See, we're going to be talking about the Hays Code, a set of self-imposed rules that Hollywood put on itself to be far, far less fun, because it is the early 1930s. Hollywood is in full swing. Movies have just come onto their own as a major form of media, and like all media before it, it is immediately accused and attacked of being demonic, satanic, immoral, and a destruction of all society.
I've heard that one before.
Like books and plays before them, and like games and TV after.
Quite literally, movies are still called that today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not much has really changed. They tend to like to describe anything fun as that.
Yeah.
Who's they, Justin?
Certain people that I would rather not rant about.
No. We've just changed our topic today. We're going to McCarthyism. I want names.
I would name.
No.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck.
That is
Anyway.
Aaron's contribution.
Anyway. So to give you a little bit of a setup to what this code was and what happened, we got to take you back to before the code. This is going to be pre-code Hollywood, which took place from 1928 to 1933. This is sound cinema. This is movies as we understand them today, where both the image moves and the people on the screen talk.
As they called them in the old days, the talkies.
I thought they called them Nickelodeons
Yeah. Anyway,
because they cost a nickel.
Anyway, sound cinema officially began in Hollywood in October of 1927, and by the start of 1928, films were being readily made with sound. It was discovered that these talkies were far more profitable and far more entertaining than the silent films. And it's during this era that the impetus for the Hays Code comes into full swing. Films of this era take their sort of free creative license and run with it. They are open about subject matters. They are very brazen. They do not have any sort of correctives about morality. The point of the movie isn't to show you that doing this is wrong or that you'll be punished if that. The point is to tell a story. And they don't really care what story they're telling. You get some wonderful films. You get, I believe, I can't remember what it was called, but you get a lot of very powerful gangster films from this time period. A lot of very violent ones. I believe the original Scarface came from about this time.
What? That sounds wild. I would love to watch the original Scarface.
Folklore.
It got banned for being more, to being too amoral. Additionally, these films featured things like drug addiction, poverty, and severe psychological trauma, particularly shell shock, or as it's known today, PTSD, in a sympathetic light.
Yeah, because World War I had ended about 10 years prior.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a decade since World War One. These people who have been traumatized by the violence they witnessed have been in society for about 10 years. That's about long enough for filmmakers to catch on that this is a thing that happens. And
this is also around the time Charlie Chaplin was still very prominent.
Oh yes, Charlie Chaplin gets his start right here. The woman who gives him his start, a stand-up comedian who invented also the pie to the face.
Wow.
She was a director. When the Hays Code comes down, she is unceremoniously exiled from Hollywood and never allowed to make a film because of her being a woman.
Wow.
Among other things, including associations with a number of major actors who became associated with scandals under the new moral guidelines.
We hereby find you guilty of the crime of
Yeah.
being a woman.
Yeah. Thank you. And so a lot of these things that we're talking about now, such as people suffering severe trauma being treated as sympathetic instead of weak or cowardly or inhuman, those things are things that get banned under the Hays Code. Additionally, there's a lot of stories that feature things like overindulgence, particularly in drugs and alcohol, extreme parties. A lot of Animal House type stories take place where characters are living hedonistically. And instead of being, brutally torn apart by wolves at the end of the story, they more or less live hedonistically and then move on and the story ends.
This
Because
is what
the
it sounds
point
like.
is to, yeah.
This reminds me of like early 2000 party films.
Yes. That is what Hollywood is doing at this time, is just
Oh
So
God.
no, the
Thor,
point is to show off extravagance, have fun, live voyeuristically in the sense like, I wish I had a champagne swimming pool.
but see,
That would be hilarious.
I also want to highlight, because you're talking all this indulgence and all this alcohol. This was
Yeah.
also around the period of time in the United States that prohibition was really, at least at the beginning, in full effect, and towards the end starting to be repealed, where you start
Oh,
seeing a lot of indulgence in alcohol, a lot of parties, a lot of like substance abuse, because now it had started to become more widely
yeah.
available.
Yeah. So
God bless
the
FDR.
yeah. So the pre-code Hollywood exists almost entirely within prohibition. As such, these films are seen as incredibly immoral. However, the tipping point comes with the feminism of all things. A lot
Ooh.
of these films had strong feminist undertones. They showed women being independent, women being powerful, women making their own decisions, living lives without men. They even showed sex workers as human beings treated with sympathy, compassion, and character arcs.
Dear God.
That is
How
truly
And
awful.
scandalous.
And this all
Truly,
comes to
truly
a
awful.
head in 1930 with the film Morocco, which features the first ever lesbian kiss in sound cinema.
Oh, that is
Love to see
scandalous.
it. Ah, yeah,
And
boys.
in 1930, the Hays Code is drafted.
In Pride during Pride Month, how could they?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, wait a minute. Did they actually do that during June?
I don't have the exact dates for it, but I don't know if they did it during June. But it is adopted in the year 1930, the same year as this kiss. It takes 4 years before Hollywood is able to enforce it.
Are you telling me that the lesbians caused the Hays Code?
No, but this 1930s Morocco is the pinnacle of pre-cinema Hollywood, because after it comes out, that's when the Hays Code comes out, and they start trying to wrangle in all the filmmakers, and it takes them 4 years to batten down the hatches.
God forbid that they let
Mm.
just anything on TV. We get lesbians kissing first, and then they're just like, nope, none of that.
Yeah.
Goodbye. And it's like, we could have had so much. We could have had so much, like, we could have had so much in movies.
But see,
Yeah.
the thing that I always get a kick out of, and again, I tie it to prohibition, I tie it to this, I tie it to a lot of acts that happen. I know we talk very briefly about the Puritans back during our Plymouth Rock episode, but in the United States, there tends to be this entire debacle where groups will try to project their belief systems, their morality onto the wide public, and you see a lot of wide sweeping legislation that goes along with this. And I know the Hays Code wasn't codified by any means, but it still shows just how pervasive these types of plans, these types of programs were, especially in this era.
Yeah, and
Yeah, it's
yeah,
another.
yeah.
It's
We're
every
building up to
generation.
that. We're
Every
building up to
generation.
that because the Hays Code does have strong religious undertones, thanks to one of its authors.
Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, because yeah, we'll get to who those people are in a minute. 'Cause there's a few more things to understand about the pre-code Hollywood to understand why this code came down and why it comes down so harshly. So the other key things to understand is that Hollywood's receiving regular complaints about the content of their films, and these complaints center around actors, because it's about this time actors become movie stars. They're glamorized. They're glorious. They're the idols of America. And when you give a bunch of thespians unlimited money and access to drugs, a lot of them start dying of overdoses.
Yeah, they tend to
Yeah.
live very
Yeah.
very
And,
luxurious lifestyles. This
and
is around the time
yeah,
that a lot of them started buying fancier cars, started
yeah,
splurging on their wealth.
yeah, yeah.
You guys remember?
And this showiness of wealth at a time when most of America is impoverished, and the fact that a lot of them are dying from the use of illegal substances creates a lot of anger that how dare you let these people star in your films and become idols of America if they're going to, do things that aren't, puritanically upright.
Puritanical, literally.
To be fair, a lot of those illicit drugs were also in the medicines they were giving people. You could give
Uh,
coke.
at
No,
that
no, no, no,
point,
no,
it
no,
had
no.
mostly
This,
fallen out, Aaron.
yeah,
That's
Had it?
like, yeah, that was
and,
more
and
gilded
yeah,
era.
yeah, and this
Oh,
isn't yeah this isn't medication. This is straight up most movie stars having 3 to 4 drug dealers on speed dial kind
mm,
of scenario.
Like
good
the
point.
whole drugs and medicine that really had been phased out in the 1890s, but really out of favor by the 1920s.
Yeah. Um.
I say yeah, because I remember seeing some of those old bottles when we went to the David Davis mansion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that stuff
Yeah.
was laced
No.
with
Yeah. That would be about 60 years before this.
That is like the
Would be those
Rockstar
bottles.
cocktail, basically.
Okay, yeah, no,
Yeah,
because
that
I
you're
did.
thinking of that. Yeah, you're thinking of back when America was still dealing with its Wild West phase.
Oh, because I
It's
was
not a
curious because
phase.
this kind of time period we don't really it. I mean, like prior to the Great Depression, it is very much sex, drugs, and rock and roll before sex, drugs, and rock and roll was a thing. So
Yeah,
I was, I guess I didn't. I guess I quite. I'm not quite familiar with everything else going on between there, other than I always. I mean, I guess with medicine at least.
yeah. Well, with the Hays Code, and there's actually is more than just this going on because there's the political factors as well. There's like
Politics in Hollywood?
yeah. So in 1915, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that First Amendment protections of free speech do not extend to film and cinema, even though they extended to things like plays and books.
Seems a bit.
This decision is reversed in 1952 in what is known as the Miracle Decision. However, the just under 40-year gap where it's not creates Hollywood in a major predicament. Congress openly declares its intent to begin a regulatory committee, much like they tried to do to rock and roll some 50, 60 years later when it got shut down by Twisted Sister.
Yeah, I love Twisted
Um,
Sister, man.
they,
Dean Schneider.
D. Schneider.
D.
I
Schneider
prefer that.
destroys them when they come for music. Hollywood takes a different approach. Instead of sending forth a legion of D. Schneiders to tell Congress to go where the sun don't shine, Hollywood decides that the only way to maintain control over cinema is to beat Congress to the regulatory board.
That is actually one method, yeah.
Yeah. And so they decide to prove to Congress that they were immoral by making the Hays Code, or as it was originally titled, the Motion Picture Production Code. This also would receive the name the Breen Code, and this is because Hayes and Breen are the name of the two chief, shall we say, enforcers regarding this code.
When you say enforcers, it sounds like a mob. Like, these are the enforcers. You have a problem with me, you got a problem with them.
I always get it.
Well, seeing as how you could be deprived of your job and blacklisted for life if you ignored them, yes.
Oh, God.
You mean mob-like tactics in Hollywood to use to coerce people into acting a specific way?
It's the 1930s.
No, I'm just making it. I think that's pretty
It's
accurate even to the modern.
It's the 1930s. Everyone's a gangster.
It's giving me more anti-union vibes. Blacklisting specific workers.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they blacklist everyone from producers all the way down to the people who worked on set.
Especially if they're a woman.
Aaron, and I'm surprised you're even mentioning the anti-union stuff. Remember what happened last time you brought that up? You disappeared for an entire podcast episode.
Listen,
Yes,
I'm prepared this time.
That's it. Yeah.
God gave us landmines, and by God, I'll use. No, I'm kidding.
Listen, all of you. I'm gonna rope back in here. Come now.
Why do I hear
Children.
the ATF at my door?
Oh
Come now, children.
no.
Anyway, the Hays Code was first adopted and written up in 1930, same year as Morocco featured the first lesbian kiss in cinema. It took it until 1934 before Hollywood was in a position to enforce it formally, and it lasted until it was officially disbanded in 1968, where it was replaced by the rating system that we have today in the United States, PG, PG-13, etc.
It's so weird that because there are some iconic movies that came out of this time, and I also remember certain movies were originally banned. And to be honest, I mean, I took a film class back at community college, but I don't think we really covered the Hays Code too much. I just knew that certain movies were banned because the reasons were it was too political, specifically one where it was Charlie Chaplin criticizing Hitler.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guess who directed that? The female director that the Hays Code immediately banned from existence.
You're kidding me.
I'm pretty sure that was her, since she is credited, and I can't remember her name, and I feel so bad I didn't write it down.
Let me look it up.
Credited with starting Charlie Chaplin's career and inventing the pie to the face gag. This woman was the beginning of Hollywood comedy.
God,
and clowns they exiled her.
Clowns ever since they really haven't developed another trick. I mean, there's pie to the face, and then there's the squirty nose or squirty flower.
Yeah, they literally excommunicated this woman.
Okay, so The Great Dictator is what that movie's called, but that was actually directed by Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
However, they do mention. Oh, I guess he was knighted at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But I am gonna look. I'm gonna try and find her real quick, though.
Yeah, all right.
So
continue. While you do that, I'm gonna carry on with the Hays Code. Now, the Hays Code is fundamentally a code of censorship, and it coincides with what is lovingly referred to as the golden age of Hollywood, or the age of innocence. And it's innocent because anything that wouldn't be fit for a nursery is banned from appearing in cinema. The list of things this code bans is equal parts hilarious and horrifying.
Oh, jeez.
And there are numerous funny little ways that we're going to look at that filmmakers got around certain parts of this code. The code prevented government censorship of Hollywood, so it did do its initial job. And it was put into, shall we say, use under the Production Code Administration, a new branch of Hollywood that served as the secret police.
That sounds like it. It sounds like a very secretive agency.
It was horrifying. The code got most of its impetus and writing done by a conservative publisher and journalist named Martin Quigley, and man whose name screams, "I should have started my own cult," Jesuit priest David A. Lord.
Yeah, that's how you start a cult.
You said his name was David A. Hole? No, David A. Lord.
David A. Lord. Which Lord? A. Lord.
Not the Lord? No, not that one.
So I believe
Edge Lord.
I do believe I found the woman's name. I believe the name is Mabel Normand.
There we are.
The first great woman comic in movies who introduced the pie gag. Yeah, right?
There we are. Yep, she gave Charlie Chaplin his start and was immediately exiled.
Also, fun fact, the first movie to show that gag, according to this, is called The Fatty Arbuckle.
Yep.
Fatty Arbuckle, that's a pretty big classic.
Yeah, that is a rather unfortunate name given the fact that that's actually the name of the actor. And he is one of the main scandals that surrounds Hollywood in the pre-code era. He's one of the big scandals that brings Hollywood down under the code. Namely, he was accused and acquitted, and from what little I saw, it seems like he was rightfully acquitted of, shall we say, forcing himself on and beating to death another starring actress.
Oh.
The woman died from a miscarriage that was not caused by him, at least from what little reports I could see. I will not speak any further on this matter as I do not have a definite understanding.
Oof.
But yeah.
So I have a question. I have a question about. So you'd mentioned that the Hays Code was essentially Hollywood's way of dealing with government oversight. Do you think it would have been worse if they did have government oversight? Because we all know that like movie propaganda, especially when it comes to the U.S. Army, is huge. Like the U.S. Army will fund full-on movies for like specific war movies.
Yeah.
Do you think it would have been a lot worse if, especially with World War II coming up in this?
It probably would have been a lot worse for Hollywood, just because by virtue of these people being directors, like the people regulating Hollywood are people who are inside Hollywood, which means that there are existing relationships that the directors and actors can play upon to kind of get their way and bend the rules, which is how you get a lot of films out in this time period, is by playing ball with these people and getting them to like you. You can't really do that if it's a separate government body full of senators who don't care anymore.
But I almost go on the other end of the spectrum where I think it was more detriment than it was helpful, because you see cases where the government did try to censor specific things, and in almost every case they have failed in a pretty significant way. So I don't know necessarily, and I mean obviously we see the Supreme Court case eventually get shut down. In what was that, 52, 52?
52, the miracle
So,
decision, as it was a miracle because no one thought it would be possible that the Supreme Court would actually reinstate rights to Hollywood.
I don't know. I very much feel like that would play an important part, and even if it didn't at that point, I think the whole argument for free speech would have eventually made that a prominent argument.
Yeah. Well, the issue was that the legal impetus for this code was the fact that free speech does not apply to film.
Yeah.
That was a Supreme Court decision from 1915. It was, and it put Hollywood on very unstable grounds. Granted, having film people do this meant that it could be more effective than if the government was doing it, but it also meant that people who could get along with the higher ups in Hollywood could find ways around the rules that, technically broke the rules, but you could kind of ignore it
because they weren't these weren't codified. These weren't
for me.
Oh, these were codified. They just weren't laws.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I mean. Yeah, like these weren't,
because it is a codified set of rules. Make no mistake. This is This is something like a 20-some page document that details out exactly what you can and can't do.
Because the punishment, if at worst, would be you don't work in Hollywood anymore. But if it was a law, the punishment could like be jail time.
Well, and that's just it.
Yeah, and let's actually get into what this is before we debate what its merits may or may not have been. Sideshow, there were no merits.
Fair.
The first head of enforcement, and I should say the Office of Enforcement, its first head was William H. Hays, the man in charge of the whole project. He was a former postmaster general, so he was someone respected by Congress, at least, allegedly.
Fun fact, that is the highest paying job in the U.S. federal government system, is the postmaster general.
Yeah. He was the head of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America, MPPDA, which would later become the Motion Picture Association, the MPA. This is the organization that gives out the Oscars every year. It still runs Hollywood to this day. And his big contribution to the Production Code Administration was to appoint Joseph Breen as the director of the PCA. Now, Joseph Breen becomes the main force of the code in Hollywood under the backing of William Hays. He was most notable for the fact that he believed that Jews controlled all of media and that they were responsible for sex, violence, and moral detriment in every form.
Ooh, that's
This was his stated opinion. This is the nice version of it.
Nice.
This is the nice version of what he was like. And I'm sorry to say, the number of people saying that Joseph Breen really was a great man white knighting for films are full of it.
There is
'Cause he was not.
nothing redeemable about this man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he was his appointment in 1934 brings about a rigid enforcement of the code. He is the man that clasps on the iron fist and doesn't let go for like 20 years.
Do you know who else was an anti-Semite that ran a pretty ethical business? Was the House of Mouse.
Anyway,
Oh, I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were gonna say Henry Ford.
listen, we can do that later. This is
should just
about
have
the
a whole
Hays
segment.
Code.
We should just have a
Please.
whole episode on this.
Please.
Famous anti-Semites.
Now, what this Iron Fist meant was that without the express consent of one Joseph Breen, director of the Production Code Administration, no movie script could be put into production in Hollywood, and no completed film could ever be released without his express signature.
So did he like watch all these films, or was he just given a synopsis?
I don't know. He may have watched them. He may have been given a synopsis. He had an entire body operating under him, but basically you had to convince Joseph Breen that what you were putting out there was 100% in line with the code, or you were fired.
That's so weird. That's so like
Now,
just
now-
as somebody who
Yeah.
loves like looking at logistics of things.
yeah. Yeah.
There's no way because we all know
Yeah.
how many movies are like vaguely produced by Hollywood each year. I feel like there's no way this man sat down each and every day and was just like, all right, next movie.
Well,
Yeah.
what I'm assuming is I think Colum's kind of on point with it. I think he probably had a team of people underneath him that did 99% of the screening. And if there were ones that were controversial or were close or like, I'm sure it got kicked back to him at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with that, remember how I said people are apologetic towards him a lot?
Yeah.
Well, he is credited with translating what was considered dangerous into things that were ambiguous or subversive. And this is seen largely because Joseph Breen appears to have been a fan of political dramas and was known to greenlight things like the Grapes of Wrath and Black Fury, both of which would have been, shall we say, questionable towards American patriotism. But he greenlit them because he liked them.
Honestly, I've seen the original Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah, it breaks the code. But
Yeah.
he greenlit it because he liked political dramas. And this is where he gets a lot of apologists saying he wasn't that bad. He just liked a genre that he himself controlled.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest in a position of power.
Yeah.
Gee golly almighty, I have never heard
Like, don't
that
get me
before.
wrong, I like a good political drama, but like the guy's still an asshole.
Yeah. He retires after 20 years in 1954. This is one of the 4 things that bring about the death knell of the code is his retirement, because he really is the driving force behind keeping everyone in line. He is the man running this secret police. He is the man who is firing you. No one else everyone goes along with this because they are afraid of this man.
The man behind the curtain.
Yeah, please pay no attention. Oh, that was also produced around this time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you might have watched it.
Welcome. Your childhood is ruined. Your childhood is ruined. The golden age of Hollywood was run by an anti-Semite on a horrible power trip.
I wonder, what if that was like the origins? I just imagine the Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's pointing at the screen of him watching The Wizard of Oz and pay no attention to the man behind the screen.
Yeah. So all right. You ready to watch the code go from bad to worse?
Oh my! How does it get worse?
But wait,
Because we're gonna explain a few things. Number 1, this code applied to anyone who produced, distributed, or exhibited films in Hollywood. That means that it applied to people who showed the film.
Oh, so movie theater.
Imagine AMC getting banned from playing any American film because they showed Morocco.
I mean, we probably get a lot more foreign films.
Oh, that's going to be one of the things that kills it later too. Is they can't
Oh,
control foreign they can't control foreign films, so all the theaters start importing raunchy foreign films
The
to get people to
French!
come.
The French, they're releasing movies we can't
Oh.
control.
It's actually the British. It's
Oh.
the British that kill them because the British install a rating system before America does, and so they're able to just say, "Hey, we warned you that this film features dark and mature content. Great, give it."
Give it. The Americans want it
It's
so
like-
badly.
and the British are like, "Well, we covered our asses legally. Bye."
That's usually how the British work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the Americans later on go, that wasn't a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah. And
Listen,
this
tweaks.
code was also officially voluntary. It was never a mandatory code, but it was voluntary, like being a member of the Communist Party in Soviet Russia.
So you get voluntold, is what you're saying.
The way I like to phrase it is because this has happened to me several times where I was volunteered. I call it forceful volunteering.
Yeah, yeah. The code was used as a cudgel to blacklist anyone for any perceived transgression, whether they were a producer, a director, an actor, or just the guy who worked on set. If your set design didn't meet code standards for any reason, you got fired. And yes, there are code standards for set designs because it is too raunchy to have married couples seen having a shared bed in their bedroom.
Okay, but like that's so unrealistic.
Only. No, hey, this is why I Love Lucy has Ricky Ricardo and Lucille Ball in separate twin beds, separated by a potted plant.
So they are two of so I actually made a note later in the notes about this that I wanted to highlight because another thing about the Hays Code was they didn't want to show anything that alluded towards sex. So it was the twin beds, separate twin beds. And I Love Lucy was also a huge groundbreaker in that they also showed the first on-screen pregnancy by a female lead. But the thing is, they never directly said. They just kept alluding to it. They kept like making offhanded like gestures. They never straight out said she is expecting a baby. It was
You on the nest?
Yeah.
Which is the dumbest way of saying it I can possibly imagine, but I remember that.
It's like saying sex without saying sex.
Yeah,
because it's implying that she had it because she's pregnant.
That's why I always find it interesting when people are like, "Oh yeah, we're trying for a baby." You know what it means, but there's just a politer way of saying it.
They're just announcing that they're raw dogging it.
Okay, Aaron. Yes. I was trying to avoid having to be that explicit.
Listen, Justin, the Hays Code doesn't exist anymore. You're okay.
Anyway, yes, but YouTube demonetization does, so silence.
Oops. Praise be the algorithm.
Anyway, the core idea of this code was that if films promote morality, society will become more moral. And it implicitly implies, which is a definite non-starter there, that the immorality in society was a result of films not being moral enough. Because, the socioeconomic problems of 1929 could not possibly explain a rise of poverty and crime.
Yeah, I wonder why that happened.
Yeah, the Great Depression could not possibly explain why people are becoming impoverished and desperate and turning towards criminal means to stay alive. No, it must be because these Hollywood elites are filming things like women having jobs.
Yeah, if they didn't...
Again, where have I heard this before?
If they did not impart such ludicrous ideals into the public, maybe those people would have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and gotten a job and not lived in a Hooverville.
Yeah. Anyway, Justin, I'm not engaging with that.
For legal, that is a joke, by the way. If you're not watching, if you're listening, I'm being facetious.
Yeah.
For legal reasons, that's a joke. For legal reasons, that's a joke.
When it was implemented, it took a lot of existing stories and changed them so that they would be appropriate for the code. It had to neuter most of the stories that it adapted from books, plays, etc. Because because the code demands adaptational karma, which is the idea that anyone who transgresses against morality as defined by the code must be visibly punished on screen for their transgressions to show that if you do thing I don't agree with, you will suffer horribly. This leads to a lot of changing of subjects and subject matters. It really screws up with a lot of films. In addition to effectively banning most of Shakespeare.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there's a lot with Shakespeare that should not
Yeah.
make it into movies
Oh,
in this
oh,
period.
Shakespeare. Almost every Shakespearean play is outright banned at this time in terms of film.
Also, kind of interesting because I think it was like towards the end of the Hays Code, but I think that's also when the Ten Commandments and Passion of the Christ were filmed.
Oh my God, Ben-Hur came out in 1952, I think.
Yeah, so
yeah. Anything after 59 is effectively the Hays Code struggling to maintain order.
I'll say, and also John Carpenter's The Thing came out that same year.
No, Carpenter's Thing didn't come out in 52.
No, so there's the
there's
the
the
version.
Thing from Another World, which came out in the 50s. And then there's John Carpenter's The Thing, which came out in the 80s.
No, there's another version that came out before the 80s. The 80s was actually a remake of the one from the 50s.
Yeah. But John Carpenter's The Thing was 1982.
He's talking the specific John Carpenter.
The Thing from Another World came out in 1951.
So it's the same. It's like the same concept, but not the same movie.
It's the same and 1951's Thing was Christian Nibbe. And 1982's was John Carpenter, both of which are based on a 1930 book by Campbell.
Okay, so they're both based off the same book.
They're both based on the same book.
But still, that's a horror movie.
It's a horror. Yeah, it is a horror movie, and it features a morally upright American Air Force officer saving a woman from a alien monster that scientists want to experiment on in order to better understand.
That is not the same movie. That is not the same movie.
It is not. No. Go watch the 51. Go watch the 82. They're completely different.
I think that one's actually on Amazon.
The 51 one has a lot of very beautiful examples of the Hays Code. But yes, films are forced to dance around things like violence, suicide, sex, and drugs because all these topics are forbidden. Most things are forbidden, and we're going to get into actually right now what the Hays Code expressly forbade.
Oh my God, I'm excited. Excited for all the wrong reasons.
Actually, hold on real quick. Before we go into the things that it explicitly forbade, we made an offhand remark about 10 minutes ago, and it finally took my brain a second to catch up. We talked about the YouTube demonetization.
Yes.
Modern Hays Code. Ambiguous rules,
indeed.
Voluntary to follow. But you need to do it if you want to succeed on their platform. Otherwise, your content gets tanked.
I think the problem is because the main difference is I think the motivations, because with the Hays Code it involved morality issues.
That's exactly what YouTube does.
But with the YouTube one, it's based off companies, not what because YouTube used to have advertisings on every video if you were eligible for them, and that included videos that were
not suitable for advertisers is the terminology that they use.
Yeah, but I specifically remember, I believe it was either Pepsi or Coca-Cola, and it was on somebody's.
It was Coca-Cola, and it was after backlash because the ad was being shown in front of an extreme right-wing commentator who was uploading videos that was offensive content. That's what
but we can
motivation for this one's money. So arguably the motivation for that one is money.
It's still morality. It's
morality, but more towards money.
All right. We'll look at the Hays Code some more. In the meantime, Justin, make a poll, put it somewhere. It says, "Is YouTube modern Hays Code? Yes or no?"
In the comments below, tell us if the YouTube monetization codes is the modern day Hays Code.
Actually, I will do that as a YouTube poll, and if you're listening on Spotify, it should be the question prompted beneath the show. So
wait a minute, you can do that on Spotify?
Yes, we have it on every single episode. To which Colum was praised for being passionate about history.
Yay! Screw you guys.
What?
That's because I'm the researcher. I do all the behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, I'm not a proper commentator. I shouldn't even be on this part of the stage.
I like to think of myself as I am learning as it goes.
Yeah, that's the point. We're all here because we love history. So I'm gonna do some quotes now from the stipulations of the Hays Code. So Hays Code exists above all else under three general principles, each of which is more horrific than the last. General principle number 1. No picture shall be produced that will lower the moral standards of those who see it. Hence, the sympathy of the audience should never be thrown to the side of crime, wrongdoing, evil, or sin.
Evil.
Oh my god.
That one hurts. That one hurts in a lot of ways because, let's be honest,
Robin Hood couldn't be shown. Any version of Robin Hood.
Because he's stealing, obviously.
Yeah, he's an immoral man. Second of the three general principles, correct standards of life, subject only to the requirements of drama and entertainment, shall be presented. So, what's correct? And you want to guess what they thought it was?
I have a guess. Puritanical standards.
Biblical Christianity.
Dear God.
Jeez, why am I not surprised at that?
How is that somehow worse?
Because number 3 is the coup de grace. This one
I like it
expressly makes it Christian. Law, natural or human, shall not be ridiculed, nor shall sympathy be created for its violation. What is natural law?
Gee, I can't imagine what that could be.
Why it is the law of our Lord and Savior, Allah.
Wait, hold on. I thought we were all flying spaghetti monster disciples here.
Yes.
Praise Cthulhu.
Throw this back to like 2000.
You betrayed us for Cthulhu.
Yes, absolutely. I would trade both of you in a heartbeat to Cthulhu.
To be fair, I would trade you to Satan for a roll of duct tape.
Listen,
what color?
I'd kill you both for a Klondike bar.
Purple, of course.
Okay. As long as you get the right color, I'm not upset. And Colum, Klondike bar, old meme, but solid response. Solid response. I'll give you a B+.
I don't need your grades. I don't need your
He gets a cookie.
I'm my own thing.
He's an independent gay man who don't need no.
All right, I'm here with David S. Pumpkins.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah, I'm 4 months out of date. Anyway,
how does this train wreck keep going?
Anyway,
I love it here, guys.
Someone put up a counter for how many times I have to say anyway. These principles were clarified and expanded on in numerous subheadings, including, but not limited to, crimes against the law, which stated that violations for criminal acts must be shown on screen. This means that if someone breaks the law, you must show the consequences.
So murder obviously has to be, and then like arrest.
Yeah, you have to arrest.
They have to follow Hammurabi's law. Call back to last episode.
Oh yeah, just cut off the hand. Yeah, no, it basically has to show consequence. That means that if someone does something that is not the moral standard of the Hays Code, which is, as we think we've hinted at long enough, predominantly white, male, straight Christian, then they must be openly punished for it. That means if someone hints at having, shall we say, less than purely masculine tendencies in a man, they must suffer because of it.
Oof.
They must suffer tenfold what they have dealt against society.
Ooh, sorry guys. Looks like y'all are getting punished, and I am.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm fine.
Listen. Additionally, criminal acts cannot be portrayed in a positive light. Hence, no Robin Hood. Because even though he is stealing from a corrupt society to save the people, he is stealing, and we can't encourage that because stealing is wrong.
Not, moral corruption, not, exploiting the poor or the weak.
No, no, no.
No,
The
because it's
law,
fine because the people in
Ju-
power are okay with it.
Oh, okay, okay.
Justin, the law is the sacred bond of society. It is the definition of morality. How can the law be anything but the most moral standard one could possibly find? That is how the Hays Code operated.
You mean
And
laws
if you
that
think
are
there's something wrong with that, you're right.
Well, wait a minute. Weren't the same laws in this very same country also saying slavery was okay at one point?
No.
Not,
Laws.
no. The current law is always the right law. You've got to do some double think on yourself there, Mr. Orwell.
Oh,
The law never changed. The law always was.
thank you, Mr. President.
And if you'd like to continue, please drink more Kool-Aid.
Anyway,
Ooh, don't mind if I do.
next up is one of the best subjects in the entire code. It is labeled as sex because apparently you can write down the word in Hollywood, but you can't say it on screen.
God forbid.
Nudity is forbidden. Sexual relationships of any form cannot be portrayed. They had a word for this, but it basically boils down to anything resembling interracialness must not be shown.
Which, can
Oh,
you
good.
tell me the first example of that being broken? I know the example.
It's Star Trek.
Yes.
Is it
Yes,
really?
it is William
the
Shatner.
original series of Star Trek. brought to us the first interracial kiss courtesy of one James Tiberius Kirk.
And the
I know
interesting-
Star Trek broke a lot of boundaries, but I didn't know they broke that one too.
So
it almost got the show canceled.
Are you serious?
William Shatner, to his credit, had done a lot of horrible things in his life. But one of the good things he did was he made sure that kiss got aired, because during every single other take that they did, he messed it up intentionally and made the clip unusable. The only salvageable clip that they were able to cut into the show was the kiss. So he managed to 5D chess his way into breaking that color barrier.
Yeah. Additionally, queerness is outright forbidden. So we have banned interracials, and we have banned queer people. So we literally are down to white straight couples only.
And even then, you could barely show them having any form of relationship.
No, we must sit. You know all the boomer memes of how they hate their wives and they never interact with them. This is where they learned it from. This is where their parents taught it, because this idea that you should not interact with your spouse on any level is what this code creates.
Honestly, I honestly thought most of those boomers were just inherently gay because they just hated their wives.
Yeah.
Listen.
This is responsible. Because keep in mind, this ends in 68. All right, this ends in 68. The boomers, this is their early years of their childhood.
Oh, you got a point. Actually,
This code.
I like how
no, yeah, you're right. Because
This is why. Because this is what Hollywood told you was normal for society: was you marry someone, you keep them on a 10-foot pole, and you never talk to them.
and you sleep in separate rooms and separate beds, and
And you don't share your feelings, because that's too queer, and God will punish you in the form of some sort of comedic.
But Aaron, look at the contrary, because you and I talk about this a lot, about how it became you could see the generational divide, because a lot of older generations do have that isolated, cut off, and then a lot of modern younger men very much are the opposite of, working for what's the best way to put it? I keep thinking of the S word, the simp, simping for their woman.
I don't know.
hold on.
I know.
have
Far
a good term.
extremes. I'm going far extremes.
I think it's a bit simplistic, but I know what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
anyone over the age of 25 is so confused as to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna
Aren't
leave
you
it.
older than 25?
Why do you think I'm confused, Aaron?
Not you, Justin. I'm 25.
Anyway, we're gonna go through the next couple because they all relate together really quickly, and that is vulgarity, obscenity, and profanity, because apparently 3 words for cursing aren't enough. So, vulgarity specifies that there should be no discussion or depiction of uncomfortable or impolite topics. This includes things like poverty and class struggle. It is illegal to show people being poor.
Isn't this
in the 1930s?
Hold on, wait a minute. This is also around the time from the. This is just a little bit after the Red Scare too, wasn't the first Red Scare?
This thing comes in after the first Red Scare, and it dies, I think, about the same time as the second.
Yeah, no, McCarthyism really takes off in the 50s, so,
Yeah, what?
Quite the interesting time in American history.
Yeah.
It's so weird because we always learn about, we learn about these topics, individually,
as an
even
isolated topic, but no, it's all interconnected.
Yeah, we never...
intertwined.
Yeah.
I love these moments, though.
Aaron finally had a eureka moment where the little kindling started connecting.
Listen, the dots were all there. You just had to connect them.
The next one under vulgarity here is, you shall not take the Lord's name in vain. Now, it doesn't specify this, but given how much things have been going, it is pretty clear that it is the Christian Lord, because apparently no other God exists.
So you could say Thor's name in vain.
Technically. Because this appears to have been meant for Christianity. In fact, it was illegal to mention God outside of a church context during under this code. God could only be mentioned in a church in relation to a pulpit.
This kind of gives off the same vibes of Utah banning the Bible from schools.
Yes. Yeah, basically this was don't say gay, but instead it was don't say God. Hollywood did itself.
Wrong G word, guys. Hold on a second.
Don't worry, we still have 70 years to correct it.
Yeah. Second up is obscenity, which we hit on a little bit earlier. And basically it means that you cannot imply the existence of an obscenity. Like, say, I don't know, a woman being pregnant, Lucille Ball.
Again, how is that an I guess because
it is obscene to imply reproduction exists. How do you think the baby got in the woman?
Jesus, of course. Oh no, wait, that's God.
No,
God.
It was a stork flew down from above and did it with the woman.
It was don't be ridiculous. It's stem cells.
Hold on, wait a minute. I think he's onto something, boys.
Finally, profanity. Cursing is outright forbidden. A major exception had to be made in 1939's Gone with the Wind for the use of damn, and that was only allowed because it was part of the original novel.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Yeah, because it was an iconic scene. Yeah.
Yeah. That iconic scene is made iconic not just because of the acting and because of the setup of the story, but because the woman saying "damn" on screen broke the Hays Code outright. It was not allowed to happen, and they had to issue a special proclamation for the film allowing it.
It really was a controversy when it came out.
I remember a little bit about this. I was just like, because off screen we mentioned we were talking about the movie, and I think it was Colum who said in the actual book they say "damn" 30 times.
Yeah, and she's allowed to say it I think twice.
The one is the man. It's Clark Gable.
Oh, yeah, all right, yeah. So Clark Gable. Yeah, so the movie says it twice out of 30.
But the one is at the end when he turns to her and goes, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn."
Yeah.
And then rides off into the sunset.
Yeah. The next two sections are costume and dance, or as dance would better be known, suggestive movement. So costuming straight up says that you can't have nudity or semi-nudity allowed. Now, what this means is you cannot show below the neck and above the forearms.
So another fun fact with this here is this is one of the things that Elvis really broke a lot of barriers with in the early 50s, because what did Elvis do really well? He shook his hips. And you know what shaking hips does.
He shook his hips. He shook his hips and he roared like a V-neck.
Yeah. My grandma's first love was Elvis.
Yeah.
So was a lot of girls. It was a lot of awakening for those kind of girls. But it was truly an outrage because do you know who else shakes their hips? The devil.
Yep.
Honestly, the devil can throw it back and shake it. Consider me a sinner.
You've seen the Montero music video.
Yes,
no, you don't need that to be considered a sinner, Aaron. You have my promise.
Oh, no.
Anyway, yes. There was no movement that could be considered suggestive or erotic allowed. This basically meant no dancing, short of, say, classical ballroom dancing, and even that was considered, oh my.
God, imagine if Footloose was released like right after the code died.
Footloose. They would be complaining about Footloose in 1940 Hays Code. They'd be complaining about classical music and all these young people doing ballet.
Well, no, I think they would be complaining about kids getting jiggy with it with the jazz.
Yeah, imagine if they showed the twist in
movie. You can't show the jazz on it.
Do the twist.
Do the Charleston.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The Charleston.
All right. Anyway, Ray Charles music number from Blues Brothers aside. We finally come to religion. And this is where it becomes even more apparent that a pastor wrote this. Because you cannot profane the Christian religion. You cannot violate the moral guidelines of the Christian religion under any circumstances. And in no cases may a minister be portrayed as villainous or comedic, which is quite frankly not doing service of any sort of realism to 90% of pastors.
Y'all seen Father Ted? Well, at least for the comedic aspect, y'all seen Father Ted?
Yeah, go that route, not the other one.
Listen, let's just say, if you're wondering about this, go listen to how the priest dies in an Irish drinking song. If you don't know, you're just looking awkwardly thinking of the worst case scenario, and it's that.
Yeah, just don't think too much into it, and let's continue on.
Anyway, locations. This is my personal favorite.
Location.
Yep. Places like bedrooms or bathrooms cannot contain anything that might be considered unclean or immoral. This leads to some of the most hilarious adaptations of Hollywood. Number one, couples having to sleep in separate beds. We beat that horse to death. Number two, did you know that in no film produced during the Hays Code does a bathroom feature a toilet?
Are you kidding me?
People in Hollywood can't poop.
Is this the origin where the myth where women couldn't poop?
I don't know, but apparently if you're on a Hollywood set, nobody can poop according to the laws of the movie.
God damn.
So there's just no toilet?
There's no toilets. It's considered unclean.
I'm going to the bathroom, my dear. Walks into a room and it's just
There's a sink and a shower.
You got one option, folks.
Yeah. Also, brothels do not exist because if we pretend that doesn't happen, it won't.
Every Wild West film is now just a historical.
It is. It is. Thank you, John Wayne. We apologize.
I do not apologize to John Wayne. He has everything coming to him.
Anyway, next up is national feelings, which had two stipulations. Number one, historical and public figures must always be treated with reverence because no one in history ever did anything wrong. Ever.
Gee, so...
Especially the American ones.
Yeah, this is something that I think we still struggle with because people argue that this is still should be the fact because they don't want to know that the first president of the United States was a slaveholder.
Yep.
If I say anything, there will be an FBI agent at my door.
Listen, Aaron. The second stipulation of national feelings is that the flag is sacred. The flag is a sacred object.
Listen, we're getting to some very sacrilegious territory with that one.
So Aaron Hare is definitely someone who would not survive Hays Code Hollywood.
I wouldn't survive. I would have been executed for heresy in the 1930s America if I existed then.
Yeah. All right. My personal favorite is titles. here, because titles must not be salacious, obscene, or indecent. And this, in fact, got a film banned. Because the advertising for a film, and I can't remember which one it was. I didn't manage to write down because I was writing down so many things, so I did this. But the advertising for a film was deemed to focus too much on, say, the chest area of one of the leading actresses, and thus was banned despite containing no code-breaking content.
Man, these are some.
Welcome to Stupid Things Hollywood Did, and I wish I could find it again.
There's just. I mean, we always talk about like Hollywood being stupid. I mean, like people will talk about like Hollywood being like out of ideas and being ridiculous. This is a different level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh.
And granted, I understand like they're working around code like this really horrible code, but at the same time, you really had to suspend reality.
Yeah. Well, why do you think Hollywood's so out of touch with reality? They spent, 30 years working with this.
Clearly, actual real life American
But
couples
see,
do not have a
even this
toilet in
is-
their home.
Even this whole code is so out of touch with reality and with society that it really, I think it really stagnates everything. Because a lot of this stuff is still issues we have talks with. We still have this morality debate, and it hasn't changed.
You know how when people talk about because you kind of nailed it on the head. You know how we talk about when, or at least we all know the people who complain about characters being, or people who talk about characters who are inserted for they think like they say like certain characters are inserted for diversity reasons. They're the token
people there to fill a quota.
Yeah, this is like where it comes from because we all know queer people have existed for a long time. Like at least people who like for us at least we know this.
According to who?
Yeah, right.
But
like, but because there's no real representation in media for such a long time, it genuinely feels like, oh,
it's being shoved down our throats.
Well, that and it's like it gives that feeling that queerness is a recent thing, but like it's not. It's existed for a long time. It's just stuff like this, like the Hays Code, prevented it from being in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. Is like, and I think that's where a lot of people feel like it's being shoved down their throats or like being brought up too often, is really because it was prevented for so long. This is just more equal representation, and I do think in some cases overcompensating happens, but it's a reactionary thing to this, and this was repealed in it was repealed, not repelled, unfortunately, in the 60s, and it still took 50 years for modern day to really kick in.
Well, yeah, keep in mind also that just because the Hays Code goes away doesn't mean that the homophobia stopped. Because keep in mind, the inroads that were being made in 1930 with Morocco and the lesbian kiss, those halt for almost 40 years, and then the next 40 years is just Hollywood and society attempting to rehabilitate itself from this.
I mean, because those directors didn't go away just because the codes went away. The actors still were there. Everybody was still there. It's just they were still not comfortable or willing to allow these things to happen. So American society was still being subjected to the Hays Code in movies.
For
decades.
Yeah, because the culture didn't change. It just the oppression stopped. There wasn't a new system to undo the oppression. It just we stopped oppressing you.
I mean, God, could you imagine a bunch of queer-based movies or queer-themed movies just suddenly being thrown out to the American populace in the 1960s?
Rocky Horror would have came out
Imagine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, everyone in that movie is so openly pansexual.
It's wild, man.
Anyway, the last stipulation of the Hays Code is also the worst. That is the sort of open door for the code to adapt, and it is titled the repellent subjects. Now, this mostly meant gratuitous violence as a means of stopping, say, gangster films and things like that, like the original Scarface, from being produced again. However, it was in actuality a green light for someone like, say, I don't know, Mr. Breen, to ban anything that didn't suit his fancy that day. Because you could just simply claim, oh, this thing you showed here, that's repellent. It was an open door for oppression. Just in case the code didn't cover something, you could still ban the show.
Literally just say anything.
Yeah. And that's going to lead us into some of our fun innovations here, which I think is the best part of the show, because we've been dancing around this all night long. We've talked about how married couples couldn't sleep in the same bed. They had to sleep in single beds that were separated. We've talked about how there's no toilets in the bathroom. We've talked about how you can only use a euphemism for pregnancy. We've hinted that, you can't use any of Shakespeare, and that's because revenge plots are expressly banned. Because keep in mind, vengeance is not moral.
That literally just throws out Romeo and Juliet.
It throws out Romeo and Juliet. It throws out Hamlet. It throws out Othello. It throws out I think it even
plays, isn't it? Even Julius Caesar it throws out.
Julius Caesar, Macbeth,
Pretty much
all the classic tragedies. I'm trying to think what you could do, and it's like, hell, even the comedies you can't get away with because Much Ado About Nothing and all the others have cross-dressing.
Actually, all of Shakespeare's cross-dressing, all the original actors.
Yeah, no, but keep in mind the characters on stage.
That's true, yeah.
Have women pretending to be men in order to see if the man they like actually likes them back.
Yeah, right. God.
That's half of the comedies. Is the guy thinks he's talking to his bro about this girl he likes, and in fact, it is the girl he likes. Trying to guess, is he talking about me? That's half of Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, but also
the other half is I'm murdering someone for petty reasons.
Yes. The only things you need to know about Shakespeare: cross-dressing and murder.
Yeah.
I want that on a shirt.
Oh,
add it to the merchandising.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. And we're going to come to our favorite part, the best innovation and also the most detrimental that come out of the Hays Code is queer-coded villains. Now, keep in mind, anything not deemed moral by the standards of the code, so white, straight, Christian, male, must be punished. So what do you do when all your protagonists are the same generic, uptight stick in the mud? Well, you got to put all the interesting personality traits onto the villains. And this is why the bad guys get to be flamboyant, emotional, dramatic. They monologue, they dress funny, they walk and dance, because you can do whatever you want with your body so long as you fall off a cliff or get shot by the end of the film.
This is the origin of the be gay, do crime, isn't it?
Yeah.
See, I like how the British
coded villainy. This is why all villains somehow seem gay.
See, this is why I like the British approach to it, because instead of doing gay villains, they just did it to where all the villains were German.
Yeah. Like, if you want a good example of the British doing queer-coded villains, go look at BBC Sherlock. What's his name? Sherlock's arch nemesis, Moriarty.
Moriarty,
has some very questionably effeminate scenes, and it's just like, you telling me something?
To be fair, they also portrayed Sherlock as being like there's some parts of him that are queer coded, but a lot of it's very ace, which I guess falls into that same.
A lot. Also, there's a lot of autistic undertones, but that's also another subject when it comes to this media.
Guess what Hays Code forbade you from doing? That. I don't think the Hays Code necessarily knew what that was, but if it did, it would have banned
That's repellent.
You know what? It probably would.
The code is also ableist.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Oh my God! Wait a minute. Is there no
Mr. Potter? All right. So, in A Wonderful Life, you know how Mr. Potter's in a wheelchair?
Yeah.
That's because of what a mean, horrible person he is. And the original Hays Code edit to the script called for Mr. Potter to die of a heart attack while counting his stolen money and laughing at the perceived misfortune of the main character. But it was deemed too dark for a Christmas movie.
Oh my God!
He's disabled for the sole purpose of signaling that he's evil.
Yes.
And that is why the queer-coded villainy is such a detrimental trope. As much as we love the flamboyant villains, as much as we love the song and dance and the show-offiness, they're coded as evil and othered because of this. And that's a really detrimental thing to society.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong, but like, I'm still shocked by that.
He's in a wheelchair. It's a wonderful life. That's the only reason he is disabled. That hurt you.
Oh my God.
Your childhood is over.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't really I actually watched that like when I was 18. I had never seen it up till that point, but still.
It's my parents' favorite movie.
All right. So from that tragedy, I think it's a good point for us to go on to what caused the downfall.
Yes, the death of the code. Yes. So as we all have stated, the code was officially renounced by Hollywood in 1968 and replaced with the movie content rating system, still in use today. Now, this happened in four sort of key steps. There are four major things that happened during the reign of the Hays Code that served to destroy it. Number one is 1952. The Hays Code has been in effect for 18 years. American society has come back from World War II with a newer, stronger America that doesn't quite line up with the Hays Code anymore. And in 1952, the miracle decision occurs. The U.S. Supreme Court reverses its 1915 decision and rules that, yes, film is as a form of media has First Amendment rights. It is subject to the protections of free speech. It cannot be legally censored by a government. And this removed the legal backing for the Hays Code, because in 1930, the whole reason the code was written was fear that the government would heavily restrict movies even more than the Hays Code did in order to sort of take control of Hollywood and impose morality, because it had deemed that they were, not subject to First Amendment protections. So, in theory, the Hays Code would have died 16 years sooner if it had fallen under government supervision.
Really?
Yeah, because that's when the court ruled that it is illegal to censor a film on the basis of, on the basis that films don't have First Amendment protections. They are a form of speech. Number two, Joseph Breen retires 1954. He's been the primary enforcer of the code in Hollywood for 20 straight years, and he's out of the picture now, and that's a major power vacuum for this secret police. There's, most people are going along with the code because they're afraid of him, and without Breen to instill the fear of, God in all these people, they immediately begin rebelling.
I mean, he kind of did that figuratively and literally.
No, I mean immediately, because the very next year, in 1955, there's a film called The Man with the Golden Arm, directed by Otto Preminger and starring Frank Sinatra. That's right, Sinatra himself as a star actor.
Fly me to the moon.
Yep.
Actually, I prefer My Way.
I'm gonna go with That's Life, if you don't mind.
I'll stick with Fly Me to the Moon.
Because That's Life really does sum up how Frank Sinatra's story goes here. So Frank Sinatra plays a man who is the main character who struggles with an addiction to drugs, I believe after returning home from the war. So it's dealing with trauma and drugs, two things expressly forbidden by the Hays Code, and it's dealing with them sympathetically. Also forbidden. This film was aired without the PCA stamp of approval, which means it aired without the Hays Code. They chose to ignore it and make the film anyway, at risk to themselves. And at the 1955 Oscars, Frank Sinatra was nominated for a Academy Award by the by Hollywood, by the same people who ran the PCA, for his role in this film that was banned by the PCA.
So like it was never originally aired then, right?
No, it went to theaters.
It was
Yeah,
banned after that.
It went to theaters. No, so it was banned in production. However, by this time, Hollywood's figured out a trick. It turns out that the Hays Code can't control what's broadcasted on TV.
Right. Television.
And television's on the rise, baby.
Oh,
Made for
man.
TV cinema. Here we come.
Oh
This
my
is the
God.
start? When did it crash so much?
This is the third of the four main events that signaled the death of the Hays Code.
Right, because if I remember correctly, even in the 1952, that was even British households had a television to watch the Queen's coronation.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
in the U.S.,
Britain.
that number was doubled.
Yeah. Yes. Britain, that third world country. Even the British had TVs.
Yeah.
That was your statement. Like, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, most homes had TVs. Now, this also did air in theaters because the code has found out that it can't really control what a movie theater in a outside of Hollywood does. It can just control screenings within Hollywood. But TV is the death knell because, you can blacklist a theater from receiving your films. You can't blacklist an entire broadcasting center.
This is like this reminds me of when the internet was first a thing. There was no regulation. When TV was a thing, there was no. Wow.
Wild, wild west. Crazy
Yeah.
how everything goes around, comes around.
Yeah.
Life's a
But-
circle,
but-
life's a highway. Like it all comes
you-
back.
History,
You
listen,
love-
folks.
you love that
History
the
doesn't
first-
repeat itself, but it rhymes. It sure as hell
But
rhymes.
you gotta love that the first year that James Breen is gone is the year Hollywood filmmakers go for the home run of breaking the code. Like,
Honestly-
if it's not proof that he was the reason the code was enforced, I don't know what is.
I mean, shit, you saw the same thing happen when Prohibition ended. It was like New Year's in the middle of the year.
See,
Yeah.
that's not even my favorite blatant example against the Hays Code. I think our other example is a little bit better
Yeah.
because it's a little
Yeah,
more
the,
spicy.
Yeah, the debt. So this film result and the sort of crumbling of the walls of the Hays Code that it represented resulted in the people running the PCA to issue this statement in 1959. The censors have conceded that moral conflict can be used to provide context and improve a story, so long as such conflict does not include subjects of homosexuality.
Of course, that one.
Specifically.
Yes, that one thing specifically, because they were allowing things like violence, intimacy, cursing, etc.,
Gotta
back
keep the
into
gays
film.
out of Hollywood.
They were
Wait a minute.
allowing things like drugs and trauma back into film. And it just so happens that 1959 looked at that statement and said, strange last word, strange hill to die on, but at least you're dead.
Hey, you know what they
Because it-
said? They said to the Hays Code, "Some like it hot."
Yes, 1959 comedy, Some Like It Hot. Directed by Billy Wilder, ran without the PCA seal of approval and became an
Billy
overnight
Wilder.
box office success, proving that the PCA did not make films more profitable, just more restricted.
Beautiful.
And it
I
flew
love it.
in the face of the Hays Code. This film is centered around cross-dressing and overt nods to queerness and homosexuality, including Marilyn Monroe describing in detail a romp with another woman to a man disguised as a woman trying to get with her.
Hold on a second. Hold
Oh
on a
yeah.
Yeah. The premise of this film is that two men decide to disguise themselves as women to sort of get away from their troubles and, pursue women. And they end up, shall we say, being engaged to men at various points in the film. And it's all a comedy. and it does nothing to abide by the Hays Code. And the success of this film, its popularity, everything about it, how much the public loved the film, all of it proves that the Hays Code is beyond obsolete at this point. And these sort of events of the 50s send it into a death spiral that it just doesn't recover from. It just keeps torpedoing down. And even though it clings to life for another 9 years before being officially disbanded in 68, when Hollywood has a rating system with which to replace it, it's basically dead. And that's because these films expose the two major weaknesses. Well, that's because these two major weaknesses were sort of exposed by these films and other things.
Ding
Number
dong,
one.
the wicked code is dead.
Yeah. Number one, you can't apply a Hollywood production code to the television broadcasters. All right, that's some federal communications crap right there, and they're not letting this go. You think the FCC is gonna cede power to you, Hollywood?
But
Yeah.
see, that's where the other downfall comes in that I love, is that they couldn't censor foreign films. So these films just came in from overseas, like, absolutely dunking on the code, and it's just...
Yep.
The French are at it again.
Wait, this is the 60s. So this would have been the first few additions to the James Bond series. So you've got the Womanizer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, this is also around the time of Beatlemania.
The British invasion. The British invasion.
The British are coming.
Was made partially possible by the fact that they had a wide opening in American theater.
Oh my!
Because keep in mind, any fun film, any non-Hays Code conforming film, for the most part, came from overseas. It came from Britain because they spoke English. They didn't have to dub the film. There was no work for Hollywood to do when the film came over, which meant that the film could just fly directly into the theater projectors.
It's awesome.
Sneaky.
And the 1960s certainly helped kick that off even further as Hollywood continues to increasingly violate this code. And finally, when Hollywood reads the writing on the wall, institutes the rating system that we have today, in 1968, proof that even Hollywood doesn't like the Hays Code, proof that the Hays Code was completely useless from the get-go, is given once again by the Academy Awards. For in 1969, the first year that the Hays Code is gone and people are allowed to make whatever they want, so long as you put a stamp on it with a little letter telling people how dangerous the film might be. The film Midnight Cowboy, with an X rating, wins the Oscar for Best Picture.
Wow.
Now, Midnight Cowboy is re-rated in 1971 to a simple R rating. However, it won the Oscar with a rating of X.
An X-rated film
Yes.
winning an Oscar.
Wins the Oscar for Best Picture, the first year that Hollywood says films like containing X-rated content are legal to make.
The thing I find kind of interesting about this new system too, and it also applies for the TV rating system which came after, is how movies and productions skirt this nowadays, because a lot of times, especially for the really grotesque movies, whether it's gory or just outright like dirty, what they do is they add red herrings into the movie. They add jokes that are so offensive that the censors go, okay, you have to remove this, but then ignore all the completely more mild things in the middle, and you get the edgier films. That's how like Trey Parker and Matt Stone make half their movies.
Oh my god, yeah, no, all of South Park, like some of the worst episodes that you can imagine, like we all know them, like got like put into production because they put something, and it makes you want to wonder what they put in there.
And also just one more thing too with Midnight Cowboy. The most beautiful part of this is the queerness of Midnight Cowboy. For Midnight Cowboy, centers on a male prostitute leaving Texas to New York City in search of fame and fortune and finding a fellow loner in his life. And it was given the X rating for its potential influence upon youngsters and its homosexual frame of reference.
God
So
forbid.
it was a
man.
gay film, an X-rated gay film. The first year they're allowed wins the best picture.
This just proves to you
It's
that
just like
The
just
gays
like,
in
you
Hollywood.
did nothing but oppress my people for 30 years. You die now.
I can't honestly, you know what? I feel like that's that's like the cherry on the cake, like that, or the icing on the cake.
That's why it's X-rated and it still wins.
And
like
you know, I actually think that's a perfect high note for us to go out on. Actually, no tragedy this time. The gays conquered.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's a win. It's a win.
Yeah, there might be one small tragedy. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this will be the last month that our shop, the Humanitarian Collections, will be open for some time. So if you want to grab some merchandise from us this Pride Month, please be sure to do so. It is all Pride merch by a member of the LGBTQ plus community, so please be sure to check that out.
Yep, and thank you guys for watching, and be sure to check out all of our future videos and contents. We really enjoyed filming this episode, so check out some of our others.